The Quality of Life Initiative, commonly referred to as the Health Chapter, was the idea of the Dead by Daylight developers to delay content to bring more quality back to the gameplay and fix the longest standing issues the game has. While the initiative is not totally over yet, thanks to several delays with us having seen the last major patch of 2025, I think it's safe to say already that the Health Chapter is a total failure on a lot of levels, which I want to discuss in this video. I hope you enjoy. The idea of the initiative came after months of the community complaining about the poor state of the game, with a general lack of quality of life changes and an increasing amount of bugs appearing with every patch. At the end of 2024, the developers encouraged players to vote for them in the Steam Award Labor of Love category, which was ridiculed at large by the community given that they just released one of the buggiest killers to date, the Houndmaster. Releasing a chapter with a killer that was barely playable left many players frustrated. Snug, the AI companion of the Houndmaster, got stuck everywhere and rendered the power completely useless. And to this day, the Doomed Cause chapter has the worst review rate out of any chapter in Dead by Daylight in the Steam store. But the Houndmaster was only the tip of the iceberg. Every killer had major bugs that rendered them close to unplayable, and spoiler alert, they still have many of these bugs in the game to this day. The outcries for less content and more quality of life became unignorable, and that's when BHVI announced their plans to delay new content and focus on the game's health throughout 2025.
The reality is, when it comes to the quality of the experience of our players, we understand that we are simply not where we want to be.
Yeah, we've been closely tracking all the discussions about this recently in the current state of the game. We agree that now is the time to tackle these issues head on.
And to do this, we have made several decisions. So first, we will be delaying our upcoming release by 3 weeks. Beyond that, multiple other releases and events in the 2025 calendar will also be impacted in order to give us the opportunity to truly make this quality of life push a priority.
Big plans were made to make the game more enjoyable for its players over the course of the coming year. And since we just witnessed the last PTB of 2025, I can already tell you this initiative was a huge failure for several reasons. Back in 2016, this game started as a side project from a young, growing developer team, with none of them imagining that it would still be around to this day. And at this point, with 42 killers, hundreds of perks, 50 plus maps, more and more bugs are being introduced, and many seemingly coming out of nowhere. With every patch, there are more bugs than the developers anticipate having to fix, meaning the game state continues to get worse and worse with time. Even though the main goal of the initiative was to improve the bug situation, it is abundantly clear that not much has changed at all. Nurse is still teleporting back through walls, Baba can lose his power for the rest of the game. Even Huntress hatches disappear mid-air. Deathslinger's missing aiming animation, which was claimed to have been fixed in the bug fix patch 9.1.1, is still in the game months later. All of these bugs are months old and make the respective killers feel significantly worse to play or play against. On top of all of this, the upcoming PTB had so many bugs that I would be surprised if this upcoming patch is not another disastrously buggy release that adds even more issues onto this incredibly extensive list. In this regard, the Health Chapter has failed and showed how hard it is to seemingly change the state of affairs given the rotten base the game is built upon. Dead by Daylight is suffering from its spaghetti code. The code base is so bad it seemingly breaks out of nowhere randomly. Some of the bugs that are haunting the game are absolutely bizarre. Take this one as an example. Every time you crouch as Pig, it would show you the calm spirit description instead of the ambush button. The technical depth that Dead by Daylight has acquired over the years is seemingly crushing down on them, and they will have to go back and fix the rotten base in order to change this. Band-Aid fixes just simply don't do it no more. Let's go over the bullet points of the initiative and their problems. The abandoned feature looked absolutely perfect at first glance and brought a lot of quality of life to the game in some aspects. It allowed players to abandon a trial without receiving a DC penalty, in addition to maintaining their blood points, match XP, challenge progress, and emblem scores, under the condition that the match match was pretty much over, unplayable for one reason or another. Killers would be able to abandon if generators hadn't been completed in 10 minutes or if all survivors remaining were bots. And survivors could abandon when all players were slugged or bots. This had a hidden drawback that wouldn't reveal itself until later. Unknowingly, players had been altering their MMR by abandoning the match. Now, just like me, you would probably think abandoning means losing a match. However, that was not the case. If a killer prevented gen progression for 10 minutes, the endgame score tally showed every survivor as dead. However, it was later revealed by BHVR that this was actually considered a loss for the killer in the internal MMR system. On the other hand, it was also revealed that survivors never actually lost when using the abandon feature, regardless of whether they abandoned because all survivors are bots or all survivors were slugged. The internal MMR system considered the game a draw. With this system, as long as the last survivor alive abandons before getting hooked, they could alter the game results to be a draw instead of a loss, even though the killer clearly won the game. Overall, while this feature provided an upside for players being able to save time and leave games that were not being progressed as intended, it had a potentially massive impact on Dead by Daylight's matchmaking system, making it even more inaccurate than ever. Not only that, but it also seemingly altered the stats of the game.
Okay, these are my top 6 or 7 worst killers in the game, right? 60%, 60%. Apparently Dark Lord, I'm garbage. I've only killed half the survivors, right? And Twins, I have 15% kill rate. Huh. That's interesting. We played 5 games and I've apparently only killed 15%. But there's a problem. I've actually recorded most of my Twins games. You want to see my last Twins game? And everyone dies. So what did I do? I press escape and I abandon. And let's have a look, okay? Escape, 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 escape. That's why I have a 15% kill rate on Twins, because everyone I played against has DC'd. I actually checked the day afterwards because I was curious on the website, and the website, you know what the website said? Bill disconnected and everyone else escaped. So the website tracked this as 1 DC and 3 escapes.
On the same update, the developers wanted to address the Go Next issue. Players giving up is one of the biggest problems Dead by Daylight has been facing for a long time. To combat this, the Go Next prevention system was implemented in the 9.0 patch. This system was intended to prevent survivors from deliberately dying early into the game rather than disconnecting and leaving a bot behind. Actions like taking unhooked chances, missing hook skill checks, or intentionally running into the killer were considered going next. BHVR intended to track these survivor actions, flag them in their system, resulting in a DC penalty and the loss of a grade. With this update, the ability to self-unhook was removed. Survivors could only take chances on hook if there were 2 survivors remaining, if they had perks like Deliverance, Up the Ante, Slippery Meat, or if they had a luck offering. On top of that, they removed the ability to die fast on hook by missing skill checks. There was one huge issue though. The system was falsely flagging players who were getting tunneled out of the match and did not have an opportunity to contribute to game objective outside of chase. The game considered them as intentionally dying early, and after having faced an already very rough match, they were presented with potentially a DC penalty and a message that their behavior was very suspicious. Talk about rubbing salt into a wound. This system was quickly kill switched only 2 days after the patch. While the inability to self-unhook or miss skill checks to die faster remain in the game, the original detection system used to punish survivors is still gone to this day, meaning the issue was never truly solved. Even worse, as part of this update, DC penalties got severely weakened, meaning players can DC several times for free before even getting a 1-minute penalty. Rather than going next, these survivors could now DC without facing any consequences, leading to seemingly a lot more disconnects than ever before, which is a major complaint from Dead by Daylight players today. DC bots are not a good replacement for survivors, with many of them bugging out or prioritizing their own escape over the actual players. The problem of the system is that the survivors that are griefing or going next and the ones that are getting tunneled are very hard to differentiate, making this idea effectively useless. I wouldn't be surprised if we never see the system return in a meaningful manner, making this part of the update a clear failure. In the same update, an AFK detection system was also introduced. Previously, crows would only spawn over players that were standing still for an extended period of time. With this update, players are now required to interact with the objective in order to prevent the crows from spawning and to remove them. They also included a change to disable collision on any player with 3 crows, meaning you could no longer be body blocked by a killer or a teammate indefinitely. While this change sounded good in theory, problems quickly arose as it hit the live servers. The time it took for survivors to gain crows was very strict. Searching for a hex totem or going for Pinhead's box or simply wanting to wait out nowhere out would lead to survivors getting crows even when playing the game as well as they should. The backlash from these changes led to crows being severely nerfed in the following 9.0.1 bugfix patch in late June 2025. These changes were so extensive that AFK crows pretty much didn't exist at all. It took up to 10 minutes for all 3 crows to appear. It wasn't until the 9.3 PDB that the crows would return to a reasonable rate. One of the systems that did get improved with the health update, even though it took several months to get the right values. Another system that made its way into the game on that patch were the new spawn rules. The premise was very simple and sounded like a dream on paper. In Dead by Daylight, survivors could spawn together or completely split, and being split up from the very start offers a huge advantage. To make this more consistent, there was a rule implemented that was supposed to make survivors consistently spawn together to avoid the RNG factor that spawning split offers. A great premise, but sadly this system never truly worked, and survivors can still spawn completely split or sometimes together right next to the killer in this patch today, making spawns even worse than it was before the system got added. Just like many other things, this broken system never got revisited, which is incredibly unfortunate. Great premise but lackluster execution, which is sadly incredibly common with Dead by Daylight and one of the reasons why the community wanted the health chapter in the first place. And now let's talk about the elephant in the room, anti-tunnel and anti-slug. Both of these features have huge issues that make them unfeasible in their current form. Let's first address why they're even here. In the recent livestream, the DBD developers have said that tunneling and slugging is supposedly the #1 reason people give them when they uninstall.
Face camping, tunneling, and slugging were in the top 3, top 5 reasons for people uninstalling the game.
In my opinion, that survey is very lackluster and does not give enough reasonable options. Now, almost nobody will deny that both of these strategies can result in very boring gameplay, especially for the survivors, but the approach does reveal a certain bias. There are obviously way more survivors than killers in Dead by Daylight, given that a game needs 4 survivors and 1 killer. This survey also did not really give any selectable answer that might resonate well with killer players. And the anti-tunnel and anti-slug system also both completely ignore why tunneling and slugging is happening in the first place. Let's talk about anti-slug first. The system in place here does not really help in cases where it should kick in, while being extremely good at punishing killers that are forced into slugging by survivors. I actually have tried slugging Blight and Billy on the PDB, and to nobody's surprise, I had zero problem 4-man slugging survivors. By the time the anti-slug kicked in, the survivors were close to being dead already, and it just dragged out a lost game. But on the other hand, I have played a game of Doctor 2 weeks ago against survivors who were actively stopping me from hooking by subbing my hooks and trying to save each other using flashlights and flashbangs. This effectively gave me no other choice than to slug. Given how many tools there are that prevent a killer from hooking, slugging is sometimes a necessity. I did not go into that game thinking I would want to slug, but in the end, since I have 13,000 hours, I did end up beating them in a dragged out game that felt horribly for me. And after the game, they stated how skillless I am and how this would not work anymore when anti-slug comes out. If you truly want to address slugging, you need to do it from both angles. Empowering killers to pick up safer when threatened by methods survivors have to prevent the hook. hook, not just punish killers who were threatened into the situation. The approach of the problem is lacking nuance and shows a lack of understanding why things are happening and overly punishing one role. And the same can also be said for the anti-tunnel changes. While there were definitely tries to compensate the killer, they all fell flat for one reason or another. The latest version was toned down to giving the killer Bloodlust 1 up on a hook to help them find a new chase faster. This bonus went away when using the killer power or when entering chase. This meant some weaker killers like Ghostface did not profit from the Bloodlust at all if they wanted to get undetectable from Night Shroud, which is an essential part of their power. It also made killers moonwalk the chase in order to keep the Bloodlust, leading to very artificial gameplay for a minuscule bonus that was hardly worth it in the first place. Survivors got great bonuses that could actually help them in situations where they get tunneled, but also greatly enable them to use these strategies to gain tempo for their team. Taking hits after coming off the hook gets especially strong when the threat of getting tunneled afterwards is weaker than ever. The elusive status effect also makes it incredibly easy to stick around for pallet, flashlight or flashbang saves, since there are no scratch marks or sound to further punish the killer. For this system to be healthy and work long term, it will need to reward killers in a meaningful manner, otherwise every low tier killer is gonna become unplayable and everyone will only play Blight or Kaneki. In my eyes, a better solution for this problem would be a mini pain rest for killers on unique hooks. In my eyes, both Anti-Tunnel and Anti-Slug completely miss the mark and show a lack of understanding why these problems are here in the first place. Quality of life does not stop at one role, and trying to brute force solutions to these problems will only create new ones that will make other players quit. Since there's only one major patch left until the end of the health chapter, I wouldn't get my hopes up for a lot of things to get fixed. Dead by Daylight still has major issues that will need to be addressed in some way or another. While some things were definitely positive about this update, like bulk blood point spending, there are huge issues on the horizon that will need to get fixed. I am very passionate about the game and I'm worried about its future. In my opinion, Dead by Daylight took a step back this year. Even though FNAF came out and there were a lot of positives, the negatives are definitely overwhelming and the general direction the game has to go in will need to be addressed. Sorry for the ranty nature of this video, but I think this one was necessary and I hope to see you next time.